Hey, Ali.
Hey, well, morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. Early for
So,
you. How you doing?
I'm tired. I just,
Yeah, but
well, I've been up since for 2 hours, so got
did you have
some.
work?
No, I just got some exercise in,
I had
but
to change my workout routine to evenings and turn it down a little bit because it's the Ramadan, so like we're fasting, so I couldn't
yeah,
work out in the morning, so I had to change it like in the evenings.
yeah, I'm thinking about changing mine too to some time after I drop off the kids. Just kind of hard once work starts up, and not
Yeah.
sure if I have meetings, and usually doing it this early before the kids get ready is more productive, right? Nobody's awake. But
Yeah.
whenever I wake up too early, I get like this thing on my eye. Like it feels like there's something in there, but it's because I didn't get like 7 hours of sleep. So it like starts twitching on me, starts
Oh,
hurting.
I see. Gotcha. Morning,
Yeah.
Scott. Morning, Jim.
How you doing, Scott? Jim?
You'll have to
Morning.
pardon me. I am battling the final result, the last part of the flu, which gave me bronchitis. And to top it all off, double pink eye.
Double. Oh,
Double what?
rare.
What?
Double what?
Pink eye.
Oh, ouch. That sucks.
Yeah, started here, has migrated here.
No, that
That's
sucks.
rough.
Well, the greatest thing is we left for vacation a week and a half ago. And we get there, and all four of us test positive for the flu A. Yeah, it was awesome. So we spent the first 3 days of our vacation holed up in our hotel room,
Oh man, yeah,
jacked
that
up on
sucks.
Tamiflu and everything, right?
Mhm.
That
Um,
sucks.
Man, sorry
yeah.
that happened to you guys on vacation.
Man,
Did
horrible.
you
It was the
did you get to
vacation
enjoy it
hell this
all
year.
after those 3 days?
We finally got out and about, and was able to enjoy some of it. We had to take a lot slower than we normally would have.
Mhm.
And then towards the end, I pick up the pink eye. And my wife has it too.
Yeah, because it's travels, I guess. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
Yeah.
true.
it's contagious.
Everybody but my daughter, who apparently, and she dodges the bullet on all this stuff, and I'm just convinced she
Even
has
the
superior
flu?
genetics.
She
So
dodged the flu also?
no, she didn't dodge the flu,
Oh, okay.
but her flu was much lighter than the rest of ours.
Oh, okay.
So
That's good.
somehow she got superior genetics out of the three of us and has the Iron Man immune system.
That's
Yeah. Kids, how old's your daughter?
They're 11. I got twins.
Yeah, that's usually the kids have a stronger immune system than us, right? As we get older, that immune system. Ew.
So I got drugs and eye drop drugs and other drugs.
so I have done something. It was a YouTube video, and I kind of do it, and it kind of so pink eye, or sometimes like get like this thing where, again, it starts like a little bump, and it's kind of swells my eyelid sometimes, especially like during the allergy season. It happens. No idea why it happens. I guess doctor said it's your oil glands. They get congested. I mean,
Get
get closed or
clogged.
something. Yeah, and it turns into an infection. And I was just searching for something, and it was actually a girl who was some makeup, like a celebrity or something, and she was talking about it. She gets this, and because of the makeup sometimes, and she uses that remedy, apple cider vinegar with a Q-tip. It hurts like a, whatever. But I tell you, it makes it go away. That's what I do.
Apple cider vinegar is good for a lot of different things.
Yeah. So I
From
have started drinking a little bit every night also, like during my whole maybe trying to, lose weight and all that kind of stuff. I mean,
It helps
I
flush your
mean, but
system, it helps control
Sugar, I think.
And bonus, it's really good to clean your windows with.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, vinegar water solution and using, get this, newspaper. Not that anybody has newspapers anymore, but a bar I worked at years ago, that's what we did. That's how the owner was adamant. That's how we clean the windows to get all the smoke and stuff off the windows.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Gonna have to find some newspaper.
It's too expensive to use.
I'll send you some. I get so much of those flyers, like so many flyers, like every day in the mail. I mean, it's newspaper
Mhm.
material. I get so many. I wish
Oh,
like
really?
there's a way to just stop that. Like, and there isn't, unfortunately. Like, I'm throwing out like at least this much per week, all the junk.
Jeez.
How's Jim Palmer doing this morning?
Yeah. Good morning, Jim.
Quiet.
Morning. No, just sitting here listening to you guys talk. I am still recovering from after 3 years, I finally caught COVID when I went to my dad's funeral. So I'm still sort of recovering from that.
Oh wow. How bad was it? Was it severe or was it just like a light
I had a really bad fever and everything for like 36 hours. It's just
Okay.
slowly been, getting better, but yeah, took us 3 years to finally catch it for the first time, but we did, so I'm kind of recovering from that.
Gotcha. Yeah,
Okay.
that's weird.
Yeah,
Mine
I
was
haven't caught it yet
We all
either.
got COVID at the same time over Christmas a couple years ago. So we had
But,
a pretty good family Christmas.
I'm pretty sure I gave it to one of the judges on the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals on the flight back. Turns out, so I get delayed in
There's a
in Salt
backup
Lake.
now.
Yeah, we get delayed in Salt Lake City, so we were sitting on the plane for like 3 hours, and so the lady next to me starts talking to me. Turns out she's having like all kinds of Wi-Fi problems. And so we spend like an hour going over all that stuff. I mean, I like, even we're just sitting there because like this freak snowstorm moves in, and so then it jammed up the APU on the plane, and then they couldn't get the engines to start, and then they didn't have anybody to de-ice the plane
Oh
because
snap!
it was like
People wonder why I'm like flying.
it was like 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon or something like that, or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And so it was like they didn't have anybody because it'd been like, 60 degrees and sunny in the morning. And so me and the lady in the middle seat ended up running out of things to talk about. So she ends up talking to the lady sitting on the aisle seat. And that lady turns out to be one of the judges on the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals who was flying to Denver to hear a bunch of cases and everything. So we ended up talking to her for like the whole rest of the flight. And it was a very interesting conversation to talk to, somebody who's like one step below the Supreme Court. It
The
was really kind
Supreme
of
Court. Yeah.
yeah, it was really interesting talking to her and getting her opinion on some topics of the day.
Mhm.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's different. It's not an everyday thing.
Yeah, it's like there's 12 justices on each one of the district courts, and I think there's 13 district courts now. So yeah, so there's only like 100 of them, and then 100 whatever, and then you throw in the Supreme Court, and you're like, oh, you're one of the top 150 judges in the country. That's kind of interesting.
That is interesting.
That is cool. I think the coolest travel I had was, I think I was sitting. It wasn't all that. I mean, he was one of the actors in one of the movies. Not the main leading actor, but playing like a side role or something like that. So that was one. I forgot which movie though, but I think he was with Bruce. It was one of the Bruce Willis movies, I think.
No, it was cool. Don't get me wrong, but my best flight ever was coming back from London Heathrow one time when I ended up in the very back of a 747, and I had an empty seat on the left and right of me, and an empty seat behind me. So that was the best flight I ever had.
Oh yeah.
Even though you were on bathroom duty since you were at the back of the plane,
Yeah.
because that's where you have to start counting people who go back and forth to the bathroom.
Yeah, but having having an empty seat on the left and right, I mean, that's like first class.
Yeah, you put
Yeah,
those
yeah.
armrests up and you kick back and
Yeah,
I was flying during COVID, so I would have the whole row.
oh, I bet.
I would lay across, no one behind me, everyone separated from each other.
See, I'm a road warrior, man. If it's under 10 hours, I'll drive it.
Oh, no way. If it's more
Yeah.
5 hours, I'm fine. If it's more
I
than
have
5
no
hours,
problem driving. 'Cause then
Sometimes I
have to
debate
worry
if
about
I want to fly from San Diego to LA just to avoid the traffic.
Well, I mean, you know, we don't have LA traffic over here in North Carolina, so
and Atlanta over here, right? Like, I mean, I had to go to Thomasville, for example, right down south, and it's 5 hours or something like that, but that turned into 6-7 hours because I gotta get on 85 and then 75 and all that, like, and then go through Atlanta. I mean, you get stuck
tell
in
you,
there, and
I have driven from Wilmington, North Carolina to northern Alabama several times. And you know, I come down and I hit 20 and 20 goes right through it. And of the 4 times I've done it, I haven't had an issue.
you got it. Yeah, that's good. That's
The only
pretty
time
good.
I really had an issue was I was going to a site in Nashville, Tennessee, and it was supposed to be about a 9.5-hour drive. But apparently that day in Tennessee, everyone decided to wreck. And as soon as I crossed over into the Tennessee border, I'm going through the Blue Ridge Mountains. And as soon as I get out of the mountains, there's just delay after delay after. There must have been between the eastern border of Tennessee and Nashville, which should have only taken me about 3.5 hours, took me 6 because there was better than 10 wrecks that you just constantly getting stopped for.
Wow.
Oh wow, that's crazy. That's crazy. National traffic is getting pretty bad too because so when I lived there, right, I remember I lived in Murfreesboro. It's about 30 minutes with no traffic from the Nashville, like the downtown Nashville. So in the morning during peak hours, there would be traffic and it would take a while to get there. But other than that, it was fine. But now, last time I went there, the side where it used to be just beautiful trees and all that, it's all gone. I mean, it's just developments after development after development. And it's not like
they're building
the
housing.
whole area has changed or it's changing. It's almost like becoming like a northern state, like smaller houses
and apartment complexes.
And apartment complexes because people are just moving there a lot. Like,
well, you know what it is. It's everybody is moving away from New York and California, and they're moving to Tennessee, Texas, and North Carolina.
Yep.
It's
Georgia
crazy.
too. I mean, it's crazy. Georgia has. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I would welcome other people leaving California.
What? So
Go
Tennessee
somewhere else.
And I mean, Tennessee and Texas, you got to realize. I mean, there's no state income tax, right? So that actually is also pretty cool.
That's another reason so many people go to Florida. No state income tax.
Yeah.
No state income tax.
That's a pretty big deal. Oh, and no property.
Where?
Florida.
Florida has no property taxes?
Yeah, that's why a lot of people live there, especially retirees.
That's why a lot of mob money goes there.
Oh, dude. Because I was just whining about my property taxes just went up, and I got my next year's bill and stuff, so that's gonna go up again already. And I'm like, this is bullshit.
Yeah, but it's Florida.
Yeah, it's crazy.
There's
So
a lot.
What are you guys working on this week?
Bunch of customer calls for me, some IoT guest discussions and all that, with a customer. Did the very first secure W2. Well, I didn't do the deployment. I was just on the call. They were doing the main thing, but I was on the call trying to learn some of it and everything. But it's a pretty good solution, actually, NAC solution.
Yeah. Okay.
Solution?
Secure W2.
Yeah, cloud based. Same. Yeah. Looked
Yeah,
at like
I've heard of them.
Yeah, so I had some conversations with JJ on it, right? And I mean, she said it looks pretty good and everything. I don't think she's like extensively used it, but she knew a little bit about it, and if I recall correctly. And so I'm like, let's check it out. because there was some conversation around it with, you know, in one of the Slack channels, and it's pretty good until I guess Mist comes out with their own NAC.
Yeah, the white sand stuff.
Yeah.
I have a client that wants to change their NAC solution as well, and it's like, when will white sand stuff come out?
So it's
then
it
I
is
could
pretty
sell
cool.
it with my
but
Juniper stuff.
Yeah, it is pretty cool, but like, so yeah, that's why until that comes out, I'm like, okay, I think Secure W2 will fill in that gap. And because we were
Yeah.
evaluating different ones, and I'm like, what are your needs? And they explain me some of their needs and all that kind of stuff. They want to do some stuff with guest, and we looked at some of the other, you know, well-known vendors. And
Mhm.
I'm like, we can go that route, but the complexity to manage it and
Yeah.
and cost and everything around it, I don't think you need all that kind of stuff. And a lot of guest stuff that you're trying to do, it's built in natively into Mist.
Yeah. Yeah, if you want to go complex, then that's where some of that stuff, like you when you bring in another solution, then licensing, and especially on guest users, like you don't know how many you're gonna have. So
Yeah,
that's my
exactly.
concern with like cloud stuff, is everything is a subscription per user. And some people just kind of don't want to deal with that anymore. I guess, I don't know, slowly I keep hearing about, you know, this
It's just
subscription
going over.
burnout.
I mean, everybody wants a subscription for every little tiny bit of
Mhm.
of any part of the package, and it's just getting overkill. I mean, it's going
Yeah.
to reach a breaking point, because it's going to get to a point where, yeah, it's convenient to not have that, but now it's just as expensive as on-prem.
Mhm.
You know, especially when
And I
you
think
look
we'll
at
come back that way. That's just generally how the cycle is, right? We had mainframes, and
Oh yeah,
then
everyone went away from centralized to decentralized.
yeah.
Everyone's now centralizing again, and
Mhm.
you know, let's push to the cloud. And you know, in most of the environments I work in, you know, cloud is a very limited option. You don't want cloud in a lot of
Oh
the
yeah,
environments I
that's
work
true.
in, just because you don't want to expose these pieces, you know, to traffic out to the universe, you know.
Mhm.
Do
Yeah, and
you
I
have
think
any?
eventually there'll be something on-prem, some solution that kind of checks all the boxes against, like, okay, it's secure,
Fortinet
it's
stuff
easy to
really
manage.
with all of their 40 stuff. Um,
I
What about
hate the naming convention,
Aruba
honestly.
Central on-prem? Have you
I have
done
never used Aruba Central on-prem.
Okay.
I didn't even know they had an on-prem.
Yeah,
But
there
yeah,
is.
you know what I call Aruba Central on-prem? A controller.
I've seen only one deployment of it. I've seen only one deployment of it. I don't know why, but I mean, I don't know. I don't know how
The
good.
only advantage I would
bad
see
it is.
to Aruba Central is the fact that it can control pieces of gear that are on different firmware revs. You know, whereas with the controller, you got to make sure everything's in the same.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Aruba
So
Central is more than wireless, right?
but yeah,
do-
Aruba Central will do switch
switching.
management and wireless management.
Mhm.
Then
Oh, you know what's good with that
integrate
controller
with-
firmware stuff? The controller firmware stuff? Ruckus VSZ. That does an awesome job if you want to run different firmwares and stuff like that. I mean, that has a
Mhm.
good.
Does it? I didn't know Ruckus would run multiple different firmwares like that.
Wow,
Jim?
it's almost like
I
I
think
wrote
Jim,
it's almost like I wrote a blog on it a couple of years
yeah,
ago.
Jim wrote a blog on it. Yeah. Yeah. So when we this one company I worked for, we had Ruckus, and we would run into that because we refreshed the site with, like, you know, we had a site with older APs, and then we had some sites that were running newer firmwares. Then we had to upgrade our VSZ clusters, right? So we upgraded the VSZ clusters. Well, but then we still had to keep some of the older APs on older firmwares. So we basically just leave them on the older firmware, right? And then we would have the newer APs on the newer firmware. So we were able to kind of do that. And that was actually really beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, it beats out the whole, I can't upgrade my Cisco controller because I have APs on firmware that I can't, they'll die if I upgrade.
Exactly. And you don't have to also upgrade like all in one shot either, right? So even if I have like a main org, and then I have multiple sites, like Cisco controller. I mean, if you push it out, it gets pushed out to all the sites. I mean, all the APs, right? So if you have 2,000 APs, I mean, you're upgrading all of them. But if I want to do just 100 APs at a time, per site or something like that, I don't know, per building, I mean, you can kind of get granular. I think that everyone should allow that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Have you guys messed a lot with the Fortinet APs and how they work with their firewalls?
No.
I recently got a Fortinet AP from eBay and got it connected up to my lab Fortinet, and I've only played with it a little bit, but it's really interesting on how it works within the interface of the firewall, because it's part of it is the controller aspect, but you're configuring your interfaces like right there in your firewall interfaces lists and stuff, and it's interesting how it does that, because I've never, like I said, I hadn't messed with it until a couple months ago when I got that AP off eBay, and as I get some more time this summer, I want to play with it some more and just kind of work with it and figure it out. I mean, it didn't take me long to, just because I guess I've used Fortinet firewalls enough over the past couple of years to where I'm really familiar with their interface. But it didn't take me long to get a fully functional SSID WPA2 up and running with proper access, and then playing with some firewall restrictions on it. It was interesting.
Yeah, it's a different model, right? Like you have Fortinet equipment. Usually it's a firewall. So it's like, well, why don't we just use the firewall to manage wireless as well?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. My next thing is I got to try to get a Fortinet switch so I can integrate the full ecosystem and start playing with it, because the Fortinet solution tends to work out pretty well with OT in general, because it a lot of places are just so diehard Cisco on their IT side. But you really want to get a differentiation of manufacturers for OT, so you're not sharing the same vulnerabilities on both. And so Fortinet tends to be a pretty solid solution for that.
And what's OT?
Alternative for manufacturing, for down on the factory floor, and then segmenting everything.
Yeah, that is
What
very
is-
true. You mentioned like OT stuff. OT folks seem to are pretty diehard Cisco. I guess because that's been
Well,
a
it
big
comes from the IT side and all of the licensing agreements that they already have in place with all their Cisco partnerships or CDW or whatever. And so most of the time OT is just inheriting all this equipment, but it's cheaper for the overarching company to buy it that way because of all the agreements they got.
What's OT?
OT, operational technology. So it's all your routing, switching, network hardware, server infrastructure.
Okay, gotcha.
But it's on the factory floor, and so it's all the stuff you're used to working with, but it's a different set of rules that you have to play by.
Okay.
Because you don't get like a Thursday night update window when you can go and reboot whatever you want to do. You can't just go reboot a switch, because if you disrupt that process, it costs them money, but depending on what you're at, if it's a chemical plant or pulp and paper, you stop certain aspects of that process in the wrong way, and the safety stuff doesn't kick in. Stuff can go boom. You can cause environmental chemical dumps. I mean, all manner of negative things. And in general, most OT stuff is not security centric. It's not built with security in mind. It's built in reliability and functionality. Security was is a bolt on after the fact. So you really have to defend the environment that all this exists in, and really control that north-south traffic. And because everything else too is very deterministic when you look at an OT network.
Isn't there also a separate TCP/IP?
That's all it's ever supposed to communicate with. So if there's ever any sort of deviation from that, there's a problem. And there's a lot of different systems that will actually monitor all your deterministic traffic for you.
Scott, isn't there also a different like there's a TCP/IP model, there's like, OSI model, and I think OT has its own separate model also.
Well,
It's
there's
like-
several different ones. A big one that a lot of people follow is the Purdue model.
Okay, yep, that's it. That's
That starts at level 0 and goes up to levels 5 or 6. And level 0 is your actual your mechanical process, what's actually interacting and doing it. Level 1 is your controls for those that actually have the impact on the real world stuff. Level 2 is your human interface level, your HMI level. Your level 3 is your upper management, and then you have like a 3.5, which is your DMZ, that's supposed to separate you from level 4, which is your corporate IT. But yeah, the Purdue model is pretty cool. If you ever want to see kind of an alternative take on things, check out the Purdue model. It's kind of really one of the baselines for most industrial OT network designs. Between that and the NIST standards, which is a lot of times what we follow. The NIST industrial standards. And I got invited to be part of the IEEE NIST industrial wireless working group. So I've been on part of that for about a year now.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
I didn't know about any of that stuff. That's interesting.
it is. It's insane, man. And there's a huge market for people who have the OT skill set, because there's such a shortage of people who can have all this IT knowledge base, but know how to apply it properly in the manufacturing sector. And it's really interesting, let alone wireless in there. There's obviously not a lot of us that do a lot of wireless work and that aren't tied directly to a vendor.
Yeah, for sure. Morning, Alex.
Morning, guys. I know I joined a little late, but the FortiGate switch, when you join that to the firewall, that's actually a really good combo. I deployed some full entire FortiGate stacks, work out pretty slick.
That's what I keep hearing. I got some cohorts that are part of the WestRock OT corporate team, and they're migrating all their OT systems over to a Fortinet infrastructure, including distribution switching. And they love it. They love that integration, and I have yet to play with that part of that integration. And I've got to get me a switch, but they're a little too expensive, and my wife won't let me right now. So
yeah, it's nowhere near as like slick as like Meraki in that perspective. From like the insights and all that jazz. Yeah, like Meraki firewall, Meraki switch, and Meraki EPs. But I mean, we're talking half the price, sometimes third of the price.
Right.
The main thing is when you're ordering switches, just be aware. Sometimes they'll be like, oh, only 16 of the, if it's like a 24 port switch, they might only have PoE on like 12 ports, or if it's a 48 port, they might only have PoE on 24 ports. So that's like the weirdest thing I've noticed when ordering that stuff. But
I know for several of our smaller clients, I've recommended it because their support staff is very limited. And, when they're only talking about having 6 or 7 switches, to do that and then integrate it in with the firewall, so they have one point of configuration. It's one place they're logging in to do everything, and it's easier to support just in general for the people on site.
yeah, that's what I would agree with you heavily. I ended up deploying it for basically like a chapel, like a retreat stuff.
I really do like Meraki gear, but their subscriptions have gotten expensive, and
Their equipment is also expensive.
it is, but you never really own it. You only lease it essentially, because you don't pay that subscription.
When she stopped paying, it's kind of dead.
Well, that or you lose your internet connection, you can't get in there and make configuration changes.
Yeah, you
Right.
can. If you can always get to the local management interface with that.
When did they
Like
change?
that.
Well, that's been around for a while. Like
That's been
you
around for as long as I can recall.
there's a local, like you can go to the IP. Usually they have like DNS records for it. So if you go to like ap.meraki.com or
Okay.
Oh, what's the one for the MX? But you can get to some
yeah.
certain local pages.
MX or My Meraki.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
And
So,
then you log in with like the serial number of the device.
yep, that's the default login. But I'm a double certified Cisco Meraki guy, so if you have questions about that, just
Thanks,
come
Alex.
find me.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, I find
But
that
it's
Fortinet's kind of like the middle of everything. They've got a solution for that's comparable to any other vendor, but it's much more simple, right? It's not flashy. It works. It's functional, and it's pretty straightforward to configure it. And a lot of people, they like to see, I don't know, latest and greatest way of managing and configuring things, but Fortinet does it pretty simply.
Well, I will say this, the Fortinet firewalls I am completely sold on. And we have, as a company, that's what we primarily recommend now for OT systems, for edge firewalls and everything are the Fortinets.
my biggest concern with them is just the IPS stuff on them, because like deploying Cisco FMC, Panorama, all those, Kato and Meraki with FortiGate, like my biggest thing is what the FortiGate stops always seems to be a lot less than like the other vendors. Not saying like it does a bad job or anything, but like the investment that they put into like the research and keeping their stuff up to date doesn't seem like as great as like a vendor like Palo Alto or Cisco that invests like heavily, like billions of dollars into like Snort or
Yeah,
Wildfire. That's like my biggest concern.
Yeah. And that's why they're kind of like the middle of everyone. They're not as super innovative as, say, Palo Alto Networks, but it's comparable. Like you just lose out on certain things. Like
Well, and that's, you got to remember too, is for the most part on the industrial side, the requirements are much, much less. You need to,
Yeah.
block the majority of this stuff, and you need to only allow, some basic communications
Yeah.
across for historians and things of that nature. You're not needing to do, a lot of you're not needing a lot of the extension feature sets that you're going to see in Palo Alto.
Mhm.
Just in general, which that also translates into their costs. So their costs are a lot less too.
Yeah. Yeah, because I like Palo Alto firewalls, but because
do
of
too.
the granularity that I get with logging, with the rules, with setting up different zones, so configuring very granular security settings. That's right, like Palo Alto.
I used to be,
and at one point I thought they were even going to buy Mist, but I guess not.
I thought so too. I used to be an ASA guy because I liked the standard Cisco ASA with firepower stuff, but their new series that they replaced everything with, my brain just does not work well with those.
I love it.
Yeah.
I'm going to be one of the few engineers that says it, but it's a great platform once you know how to use it.
Say again.
Like FTD and all that, FMC
Yeah.
and stuff. It is such a good platform. Like, especially if you have like multiple sites and stuff, it's a really good platform.
My brain just does not work well with the FTDs for some reason. I just don't get it.
Yeah, I've heard so many stories of FTD. I mean, I used to be obviously a huge ASA, I come from like PIX, ASA and all that kind of stuff, but I have some, yes, I've heard even like hardcore Cisco folks complain about FTD big time.
I mean, the old ASA 5515, 5516,
Yeah.
those were the workhorses, man. Set a pair of those up and
yeah.
availability, and they just got the job done.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And it didn't take too long to get them spun up, and there was a ton of resource support out there and forums, and you didn't have to have a full-blown Cisco login in order to get support because so many places supported those firewalls. And now they're just gone. Sad.
Yeah. They were great. I mean, I remember there's one company where there was 13 of them that we were managing in our data center, for each one for different section that they needed to protect and all that. It was like a very heavy PCI SOX compliance kind of thing, and
PCI,
then every 3 months. Yeah, and every
Still- I
3
still have
months,
Flashbacks from PCI compliance.
it was rough. Every 3 months, we had to review every single ACL line on those 13 ASAs with the security folks. So every engineer they get divided into like, okay, I think there were 4 of us, so like you get 4, and then kind of like that. It was
The only thing I
it
didn't
was-
like about the ASA series is what a pain in the ass ASDM could be if you didn't have. the
Oh, I
right-
never used ASDM. ASDM's terrible. I
Well,
hate
that's
it.
what I was used to.
I was used to ASTM too because I didn't like the CLI layout. If you were looking for something
agreed.
and
Agreed. I'm so
configuring
used
something,
to
they were like
Cisco
very
Switch
scattered.
CLI. You know, Cisco Switch CLI. You know where everything is, man.
Yeah.
It's really clean cut, and but man, you start getting into the CLI with a firewall. Nothing is where you're used to it, and so it takes you 3 times as longer. Well, for me anyway, 3 times longer to look through.
Yeah, it took me
firewall
longer too because
cipher.
with the Switch CLI, you knew where like the interfaces were, you knew where
Yeah.
ECLs were. But configuring ACL CLI on a ASA, it was like, okay, I need the object, but I have to look at it. I
Yeah.
have to scroll up and look at it over here, and then look at a firewall rule over here. And so I was like, I'll just use ASDM.
Did you guys ever get the pleasure of using the module, the Snort module?
Yeah,
on
I used it,
ASAs?
and
Oh, they are a virus these days. All Cisco keeps releasing patches, and it just causes more memory to be required. But when they first released it, they didn't like build the original VM with enough memory, so these things just crash all the time.
Mhm.
I only know this
Yeah, and I knew
because
I-
we
I-
have like hundreds of them deployed.
yeah, those caused problems for me because I deployed it for a what do you call it, like a one of those trading companies. So I couldn't do anything during the day, but after 4 p.m. on the West Coast, I was able to just make changes. But when we deployed dual ASAs with that module, I had issues with it. I remember opening TAC cases, and we eventually ditched it.
We're ripping them out so fast right now. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I never got a chance to play with those Snort modules, but I had
Never.
mixed things. Some guys loved them.
Snort is really cool though.
Some guys, well, yeah,
Yeah.
because the Snort guys loved it because it had all these features that they were used to playing with separately. So, but then all the guys who'd never messed with it before, are like, what is this? And confusion and hilarity ensued.
You
Mhm.
guys, so with Snort, you can get like the open code version, and you can install
Yeah.
it on like a PF Box. It's really slick. If you want to use that for like a home use perspective, PF
Yeah.
you can basically load on anything.
I actually just got.
Yeah, I
a-
remember doing an open source, and I had a server just dedicated to Snort before it would send like the firewall would send traffic to Snort and then be able to analyze it. But then at that time I was a solo guy at this environment. I'm like, I don't have time to read all the reports and look for any vulnerabilities. Like occasionally I would look at it, but I was missing so much. I was like, there's too much going on, too many logs I have to go through.
Snort's kind of like SNMP in the fact that it can be a job all on its own.
Yeah, exactly. You need a dedicated guy to look at it, pay attention to it, massage it.
Snort administrator.
Yeah, security analyst, right?
Right.
Yeah, take those for granted. And then that's when I just started installing Palo Alto. So I'm like, this works better for me.
Yeah, Palos are
You know, a
nice.
lot of used to Palo
I-
Alto.
Yeah, actually,
As
Palo
long
and
as you got
Fortinet.
someone to pay for the subscription, it's fine.
Very true.
Palos and Fortinets definitely are awesome. Price wise, I guess when it comes to cost, Fortinet is just, I mean, that's
I think
Yeah,
it's
you
a
can't go wrong
banking
with the
as well.
Fortinet firewall.
You know what I mean? It's kind
That's
of like
so
that.
my primary is Palo Alto, and then I default after that to Fortinet, depending on whether or not the client wants to pay for it.
nice.
So it's kind of like the whole Walmart versus Target versus like Costco.
Yeah,
You
Oh,
know,
I don't
this
know where
is like-
Meraki lies
This is
because
like,
Meraki is not, to me, not a real firewall.
Meraki is like primarily with lots of sites. That's the only time we really deploy it. If they have like 30 more sites and they're like, basically, we want network in a box, we chip out a MX with a wireless antenna, cellular chip in it.
Mhm.
With 30 sites, we can have anyone install it and the SD-WAN phone home, and with the SIM card, it's chance of failure is 0.
Yeah, I mean,
Unless they're
they've
in a
nailed
brick
down
building.
that process. They've really,
what I do like about the little MXs is how easy it is to do site-to-site VPN. I mean,
yeah, you don't have to do anything really.
Yeah, you're
It's
checking a
just
box.
enable
Yeah.
it.
That is definitely impressive. So watch out for that SSRs. I don't know if any of you got to play with it or not. SSR, obviously it's no VPN. It's used as VR basically, and it was pretty amazing. Like the failover, we didn't even know that things were failing over. It literally, I mean, it's session based, and the way it just like handles all that failover when if one circuit goes down and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's like that, and people were just doing things. Now, if it's a failover and you're browsing web, obviously you will not feel it, right? Even if there's a delay, I mean, you probably will just go see a little bit delay and all that. But when you're doing transactions that are hitting a mainframe on Telnet and SSH that requires a persistent session, your failover obviously is going to happen, but that's going to break, right? Well, with this, none of that was breaking. It was literally moving the sessions from one circuit to another
That's
as the
awesome.
circuit flipping. So I was like, holy cow, that's pretty awesome. That was impressive.
Yeah, Big Leaf does a really good job of that too. If you've ever heard of Big Leaf, they do a pretty good job of that. Like Cato Networks does a really good job of like failing traffic over, and then also like Cisco's in-house SD-WAN. It's super expensive, but it's super good.
You're
Sorry.
talking about just for WAN failover,
Yes, like WAN failover, like immediately.
like the old fat pipes used to be. Do you guys ever use the old fat pipes? When I was at the college, we had a fat pipe, and it was a dedicated WAN failover appliance. You could have up to 4 WAN connections to it, and you could load balance if you wanted to. You still had to make adjustments for secure traffic because you don't really want to be splitting SSL traffic across multiple WANs. But well, as far as like the same session is concerned, but fat pipes were pretty cool. And its failover was in the low milliseconds. I want to say, less than 30, 40 milliseconds for a WAN failover, depending on what settings you had. But they were expensive boxes,
Oh, I bet back then when you're trying to consolidate all your WANs to a
and Roy,
to a device that can do, handle all the load traffic, determine which
you're a
link to go
higher
out
end
of.
guy, so you get a lot of those really nice big internet pipes from the state and everything. So we had we had 2 gig internet pipes from 2 different state providers, and then we had our own AT&T connection. So we had 3 different WAN connections, and even that AT&T was no joke. It was 500 meg, but we're a small school, so 10,000 students. But it was impressive, the failover, because there were a time or two where you got the big backhoe fiber cuts happening somewhere, and one of those circuits would go down, and the only reason we knew is because our monitoring software told us.
Yeah,
because otherwise the traffic just failed over flawlessly.
Nice. Yeah, that's the way. I mean, that's what's needed actually, especially in some environments, like I said, where it's you're doing transactions where you require a persistent connection. Like, I mean, I see that I could see that a lot in the warehousing also, right? You have these Motorola symbol devices going back to the mainframe or SSH and Telnet sessions, and a picker is going through the whole process and everything, and probably, I mean, you've probably seen this a lot, right? If they're 30 minutes into picking and it breaks, they gotta start all over again, and they hate that, right? So not just the failover that we're talking here that's needed, it's the ability to move the session. That's also right. So that's where kind of like what was impressive that impressed me was an SSR that it did not like okay, failover was great, but the fact that it's moving that session
Yeah.
without breaking it, that was definitely pretty awesome. And then you can do other cool things, right? Like
Basically, a stateful switchover is what it's doing, right? The SSR.
yeah. Yep. And then
Because
if you
now
want
the
to route
advanced
traffic,
method is SD-WAN, where you have a policy for an application and you're telling it to take a certain path, and if it the thresholds don't meet the threshold, then it goes out a different path.
yeah,
It still maintains the sessions properly.
yeah. So that was pretty.
Yeah, the whole
Everyone's trying to
WAN
get
stuff
Ali
is
today.
interesting. What was that?
Everyone's trying to get up with Ali today.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, it shows I'm busy, so I don't know.
No one cares about that stuff.
Yeah, that's true. I kind of have
You
to.
know what? My status on Slack for at work is always away. So I always have two people that message me and saying, "Are you really away?" Like it's always a daily thing. Like, "Are you really away?" I'm like, "No, I'm here." and I'm like, "No wonder no one messages me." And because I have Slack on all my devices, and for some reason, it never changes my status on my desktop. It always says I'm away. And so people don't think I'm working. It's like I have to manually change it from away to active, and I just
The
don't.
team always says I'm active, whether I'm not. It just says I'm always here.
That's what I wanted to say. I wanted to keep saying I'm active because I'm really there. It's just I'm on multiple devices, right? Like.
As on Meraki's thing, their Z1, Z3 stuff is impressive. Like how, like a nice little
The
device.
teleworker stuff.
Yeah, teleworker stuff. That is impressive for smaller size teleworker, right? I mean, you can, if it's even a retail store with like only 5-6 people and all that, right? I mean, you don't need anything more than that. I mean,
that's like setting up. I use Aruba Wraps for our remote guys.
Yeah, those two.
With Meraki, they're killing the Z line.
Oh, no way.
There's a better way to deploy it. So you know how like the Z line does a phone home VPN tunnel back to the MX. If you just enable layer 3 concentrator or layer 3 full VPN mode on a Meraki access point, it can build a full tunnel back to the MX. And then if it has 2 Ethernet ports, you have one act as your WAN. You drop that directly to the ISP. You can do full tunnel back to the MX, or you can do split tunnel back to the MX, enable layer 7 content filtering on the AP, have that extra switch port break out into a switch. And then you have your entire network in a box just from the AP, because it'll act as the firewall. It'll build your VPN tunnel back to HQ.
Yeah, because
then it also has a breakout port for a switch.
Firewall stuff on it.
So who's going to do the DHCP then?
The AP does.
AP will do the DHCP? Okay.
Mhm.
Okay,
Because it connects back to the MX.
So didn't they just come out with a Z3 recently? So they're gonna kill it?
I don't think they did, unless I was talking to our Meraki guy and he's like, yeah, we don't know if we're gonna even have any new ones. If they do, I'm kind of excited, to be honest with you. Let me look.
No, that's great, and it makes sense. I'm just thinking because I still see Z1, Z3 fitting a lot of business use cases. Like, I mean, what if you need more ports?
Definitely. Yeah. Especially because they're like dirt cheap normally. Because you have the Meraki AP where you can maybe add an unmanaged switch or managed switch directly to it for more ports. But I mean, it's unmanaged at that point unless you get like Meraki small business switch or something, but the cost is normally ridiculous.
Yeah. Interesting. That is interesting.
No, you're right though. It does look like they have a new model out.
Yeah, the Z3's out. I know the Z1, they're not. I don't think I think that's
their throughput is atrocious. It's like 100 meg.
It's only for like 5-6 people.
Yeah,
you can't do more than that.
I don't know if you guys are aware, but if you're a nonprofit, you can get like 70% off Meraki licensing.
Our Tennessee office, I just have a RAP 155 in there, and it's a 5-port AP, and I have a Cisco. Oh my gosh, what is it? Anyway, I got a Cisco switch in there that I plug into it. And I can run all my VLANs through it, whole 9 yards, and it does. I have it set up for split tunnels, so they're going out in the internet locally, but all of their they can get to all of our development VLANs through it that tunnel back to the controller. It's been really versatile and really useful. Because doesn't Mist do something like that too?
Mist Edge, you can do that. You can tunnel the traffic back. So like we deployed it where it was a use case where they wanted everything tunneled back. So we use Mist Edge. And then especially in higher ed, it can play in a role too. Where you put a Mist Edge.
That's a downside with Mist, is you need a Mist Edge, and it's expensive. So like compared to Meraki, you just need the AP, and you tunnel. You use the VPN concentrator mode to bring that back to your MX.
But you still need an MX, right? So instead of MX, you're just getting a Mist Edge. It's
Yeah.
yeah.
But I mean, most environments are going to need that firewall anyways.
Yeah.
So if they've already have it and you have a small remote site, then
Yeah.
just configure the AP to tunnel back the SSID.
Yeah.
With Mist, if you, I don't know, I guess you would have, depends what firewall you have. You would need to have a Mist Edge.
Hey, so does Alex, does Cisco AnyConnect work with Meraki VPN stuff now?
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah,
It's been
you can use it.
unbelievably stable for our customers. If we
Yeah.
have, like,
Yeah,
500
there's an
users on
option
one.
for
recently.
AnyConnect. You still need a license, right, Alex?
Yes, but it's a trust-based system. So, I mean, you need quote unquote the license. But if you go into the portal, you hit I accept having the license, and it works right away. You don't have to like manually add the license to your dashboard or anything. So it's trust.
I know for the longest time you just had to like set up on a Windows box. You had to use like their native IPsec
Yeah.
setup for it. And I know a lot of people weren't happy with that. We had some clients that used it but hated it. They liked Meraki, but they hated their VPN options.
Man, I haven't done
The Meraki
VPN in a long
supports.
time.
I'm sorry, say again, Alex.
The Meraki supports SAML SSO as well, using AnyConnect.
That's good to know.
You have to contact Meraki support, and then they can enable the option in the GUI, and then you're good to go.
Oh, Meraki support has to enable the option to use AnyConnect?
One of those.
No, for SSO.
Yeah, for SSO.
Okay.
Yeah, the AnyConnect option is there in the GUI.
Okay. I haven't messed with it in a while, so I hadn't.
We're just finally ordering some gear, building just multiple different labs from different vendors. So I got some Meraki gear coming up too. I got some sitting in my garage. It's just door stoppers because the license.
Dude, Meraki is so simple. That's
I've
why
got-
a lot of people love it. It's you honestly just send it, and then that's it. It's
Problem I run into is there's a fair amount of clients that run Meraki, but the problem is they don't have any networking background. And so they're just checking boxes and
yeah.
doing all this random stuff. They're like, well, this is supposed to work this way. And you're like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
That's usually why most of my clients are Meraki customers who have like checked everything, did all sorts of weird things with it, and then they say it doesn't work and they're ready to jump ship and go to another vendor. I'm like, well, hold on, let me change all these
With the
settings,
wireless.
and
Because no matter how easy it is to configure,
with everything,
the net-
wireless switching,
Defaults,
firewall,
right?
like I'll see them create firewall rules, like ACL rules, and then the middle of it, there's this any rule. And I'm like, I don't even know what you're trying to do here. Like,
But no matter how simple you make something to configure, if you don't have the fundamental network and wireless knowledge
yeah.
behind it, the Ys and the Y4s, then you're gonna screw it up pretty much every time.
Defaults is
my
what I see, right? In Meraki, a lot of environments that go in, there's just defaults. Everything is set to default. So now that we got like, then you got APs running 20 megahertz in this area and 40 here, 80
They're all
here,
full-time.
all over the place and all that. I tell them first thing, let's just pick figure out what do we need to run, right? Let's start with that.
Yeah.
And everything.
And I have clients who have spoken to Meraki, and I don't know, Meraki salespeople, they like to sell a ton of APs. I had one office I went into, very small, like very, very small office. Probably could use maybe 4 APs. They had like 20 APs in there. There was like one for each section, like within 10 feet of each other.
Oh, yeah.
They had issues.
So
And they had the
that's
dynamic
Cisco's-
bandwidth on. I'm like, dude, like, let me turn off more than half of these APs, set these channel widths.
They
And
can't.
he was like, what do I do with these APs now? I'm like, I don't know. If you have another office, like,
They can't meet the monthly quota unless they
Yeah.
sell that many and get that much in recurring revenue.
That's Cisco's pretty much sales model. It seems like it, because I've gone into multiple in K-12, 2 APs per classroom. Like, dude, what are you trying to do here? 2 APs per classroom?
yeah, I see that too. It's what do you guys think about Nile? Because we have so have you heard of Nile Secure, the one founded by John Chambers?
Yeah. It's a good
So,
solution, I think. The idea is great. I've seen their demos and stuff like that. We are actually partners with them. I think
okay.
there is some, it fits, definitely I can see it fitting someone who absolutely has no wireless and network engineer, like, on stop, but just somebody who is more of like a desktop support guy, but he kind of has
Yeah.
to support in a way a network and
But how's
wireless.
that different from Meraki?
Well, Meraki, they still have to configure the wireless and support it, and they still have to know about wireless, right? If they want to deploy it correctly. In this case, Nile takes the responsibility of deploying it through the partner correctly. So you as a partner will go in and configure it, deploy it, and all that kind of stuff, working with Nile. And then Nile will monitor all the KPIs and all those different things,
Okay.
and make sure it meets all the SLAs. Now, if you, let's say, start to have issues and you don't know how to troubleshoot, well, that's Nile's problem, not yours.
So it's like outsourcing it for the most part.
Yeah.
So it's
almost
a true network as a service.
Exactly.
Like
Yeah.
you're not logging into anything.
Well, you still have a dashboard, so you can log in, you can see what's
Yeah, you have
going
a
on.
dashboard.
But but you don't have the extensive access to everything like Meraki or Aruba Central or Mist, right? You
Right.
don't have extensive
Because you
access
don't
to
need to.
all the knobs. Yeah, you don't need to. Yeah, because like, hey, as long as you're meeting your SLAs, that's what you need to be just concerned about. You can access the dashboard to look at some, reports and analytics and some stuff like that. But rest of the stuff, secret, whatever backends, they just keep it hidden. I haven't
So
tested
if-
a hard yet.
If the partner is doing the initial install, is Nile paying the partner or the customer?
No, Nile. Yeah, I believe
Nile's the one
Nile.
paying the
Yeah,
partner.
Nile's the one paying. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
So almost like a
Nile.
utility. Think of a utility company, like it's kind of like similar thing. I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
Yeah.
But does Nile say this is how much we're gonna pay you to do this, or does the partner set that? They'll
No, it's happens in the partner agreement. That's a little above my understanding. Yeah, but it's kind of like,
interesting.
so it's an interesting business model. I'd love for them to actually kind of be more get more mainstream, because then we do need some competition in that space, right? And keep everyone.
We have one school on our campus that has Nile. So it's a computer science department. They do everything on their own. We just
Right.
like provide an Ethernet cable, and we're like, this is your connection to the campus.
Do they have like
And
their
they
own
do-
sandbox?
Yeah, they went with Nile, and I don't know how it's doing. No one says anything. I guess it's doing well if no one's saying anything. Or we've conditioned everyone to say if you have issues in that building, you got to go to the people in that building, not us. Because usually that's what I've said. Like, see you, Jim. I gotta actually drop off soon too. But I've had people
See you later, Jim.
ask us and say, "Hey, Wi-Fi doesn't do well here," and then we're like, "Well, we don't manage the Wi-Fi there. It's the computer science folks." And then they're like, "Oh, okay." All right, guys. I actually have to drop off too, but thanks for joining on this coffee hour.
Hey, Alex,
Yep.
thanks for the Moroccan insight. Appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, thanks for chiming in. All right. See you, Scott.
All right, later, man.